what in the world would people do? What theory would they come up with? Because they're going to have to come up with some type of theory. We have stuff. There are things on the list that are going to directly affect humanity in big ways. I mean, forget about the small stuff, right? I'm talking about in big ways, and people are not going to be ready for it. In fact, there's, for many years now, I never shared this with you guys, but there's a place I haven't been to yet, but I dreamt of it many times. And as I was in this place, I remember some people being right in the forum with me, and they were frightened to look out the window, right? Scared to death to look out the window. So I go out there, and I came back in, right? I saw what was up there, came back in. They were frightened. They were looking at me and said, "What is it?" So I went back out there with a cup of coffee and sat down just to watch it, just to feel it. You know, you feel things. People were terrified. You could see people running down the streets. They were doing everything and anything not to go outside. It was so funny. But I was just sitting out there, you know, taking observations of it. Well, the funny thing is, later on in life, as I got in life, I guess I can go ahead and say it now. Nobody really cares. But at the National Training Center, right, in NTC, National Training Center, that's on the West Coast. That's where the Army plays war games, and the Air Force plays war games. And it was actually implemented by the some of the Air Corps personnel. But anyway, we were out there, and it was about a couple of brigades were out there engaging in combat readiness and doing our little thing out there. And all of a sudden, out of nowhere, this huge blue light covered the ground for miles. I mean, for miles. I'm standing right beside a, what was I beside? Was I beside an APC or M2 or, it was an M2. I was beside an M2. It was like a 5-ton behind me as a truck, and him to my left with rocket pods on it. Anyway, that blue light hit. I'm going over, I had a manual out at the time because we were evaluating things anyway. So, but that blue light hit, and the next thing I knew, I was standing in a daze, just looking forward. And somebody comes up to me with a clipboard and tells me they're handing me, they're handing the gentleman next to me, and some of the evaluators to the left and right, and the guys in the foxholes are handing him papers. We had to sign them, right? Now I'm in a cloud. I didn't know what I was signing. And they said, "You guys have to sign this." And after we signed it, you know, they took the papers back up. And by that time, everybody was starting to come to themselves. But that's all I remember about that episode. Well, we went back to the same place, it was about a year and a half later. And the exact same thing happened, except this time. It was about three or 400 of us that did not, we didn't blank out this time. And that blue light stayed over the grounds, and it was real bright in certain areas. It stayed over the grounds for 4 hours. The first time it happened to us, every single last soldier out there had missing time. Every single one. But we were forbidden to talk about it. That's what that paper was about. Well, that same thing has taken place twice in the last couple of weeks overseas. Same blue lights, same thing. And it's only a matter of time before that same thing happens to cities, you know, people in open areas, and they're going to wonder what in the world is happening. Then they're going to get the intelligence, I guess the courage to actually begin to look around and search and try and find out what's happening. Because what's coming forward with this, I know people are looking for disclosure, but what's really coming forward are some very broken individuals who are going to come forward and give you the true nature of what's been happening. Now, for all these folks that think that these encounters are nice, well, they have no idea. There is a technology that does exist. They can tap you in the back of your neck, right? And you will not remember maybe an hour, 2 hours of whatever happened. You just won't remember that. Consciously, it won't be there. From my understanding, that's an imposed, like a traumatic trigger or something of that nature, which causes a person to forget. Well, people are going to start remembering things, right? And once they see things, it's going to cause an enormous amount of fear, like they had a memory of it. And they're going to come up with all sorts of explanations. But what they want to disclose is to put the public will ultimately be put in a place of great uncertainty, which will enhance their desire to have answers. See, a lot of people don't like the government right now. They were talking about this a few days ago. A lot of people don't like the government. They don't trust the government. Trust of the government is in the polls is down significantly. I mean, it's never been this low. Confidence in the government has never been so low. So often when confidence is down in leadership, you stress the individuals underneath you, and then you become the go-to person they want to see. It's kind of like, you guys don't trust NASA, right? And that's what everybody used to say. We don't trust NASA. And they had all these little clever names for NASA. But as soon as something happened in space, everybody went to the NASA website and crashed it, right? All the people who didn't trust NASA went right to the website. That's where they get all their information from. A lot of people say, well, we don't trust the government. And they go right to the government website, read all the policies. If you don't trust them, why would you trust what they write, right? If you don't trust NASA, why go to them for information? So what we find ourselves in is in this position where, in truth, we get frustrated because they don't tell us everything. And the truth is, people want more reliable information from them to find out what's going on. Truth be told, and I'll give you this. If our Father in heaven really wanted us to have full intelligence or full insight into what was going on in these hidden realms, he would have gave it to us already. Don't you think? You guys think so? I think the Father would not hold back in an area that we're able to handle. So by saying that, this area causes much confusion, and it will give rise to a lot of religions. They're priming everybody as we speak, and they have plans for just about everybody. Especially with this year of all years. I heard this year mentioned as being a year of birth, right? The year of birth, not meaning change. No. But the year of birth is directly, it insinuates a new thing, right? Kind of like the new system. They're rolling in underneath everybody's noses while everybody's complaining, right? Policies are setting up a brand new framework for how we're going to operate everywhere. This is going to happen globally. It's going to be everywhere. No one's exempt. It's going to become quite confusing. That with all the changes we'll have atmospherically in the earth, and most of all spiritually, because spiritually people are collapsing. They're collapsing at the seams. They don't know. It's almost like anxiety and lots of emotions have taken over a person, causing them to become very well, let's just say a little too focused in specific areas, right? Having said that, somebody says it doesn't look real. No, that one's not real. That one is similar to something, which is why I showed that picture. You'll see it again, and it won't be that picture. But that is, you could say that's partly real, partly not. The whole is real. The object itself is similar. Not quite that object, but it's close enough. It'll do for the sake of this conversation. Because again, when people see something like that, what will they do? And not on the ground rolling like a bowling ball, but what happens when it's just there? Imagine, all right, you guys imagine going out one day and you see something up in the sky and it does not move for months or weeks, right? For weeks or months or something like that. What would humanity do? I'm going to tell you what they're going to do. They're going to do absolutely nothing. Nothing at all. It won't do anything. They're not going to do anything. What it's going to cause is a curiosity. You're going to hear a lot of people fighting trying to become an expert on what it is, and nobody's going to know, right? Then you're going to have people come out and give some sort of definition to it. It's going to cause strife. It's going to start breaking down quite a few things. It's going to send a lot of people in this emergency mode, because the plan is to, listen, I'm going to say this, I'm going to sneak this out there. You ready? The plan is to shame anybody who would call themselves an expert in those fields that deal with that thing, right? To shame them, to openly shame them. That means remove the confidence of the public from their rhetoric. That's what they're going to do. Right? It's almost like this. They have operations that take place quite often, and a couple of you guys have been in counterintelligence. So what they do is they spin lies, which are actually the truth, causing people not to believe the truth anymore, but to believe a made-up story given by an official. So if someone comes out with a slight story, that's the truth. But you have an expert behind it that will disprove that slight story, right? Then he's going to give people confidence over that slight story. Just so happens that the slight story would be the truth, and the individual who is educated would tell the lie. It works all the time. There are subjects right now people on the internet talk about that are 100%, they're false. They're false. And people swear up and down the real. They swear up and down the real because they've been in circulation for years, right? And they can't see proof for or against it. So people have a habit of making their own proof. When they want to believe in something bad enough, they will produce their own evidence, and they will link it to what they want to believe in. This type of confusion is about to run rampant all over the earth, and we have parts of it right now, right? For example, like some of you guys, you keep hearing about, everybody's starting to hear about crypto, right? Crypto. Nobody's making money in crypto. That's the funny part. Nobody's making money in crypto. Nobody. In fact, when you start looking at these companies that run the crypto thing, people are losing money in crypto more than making money, right? Because they missed the investment mark is what they did. And they're losing big time. But you have these folks that get out there and what they tell you is that, oh, it's going to be great. It's going to be great. And it never works. That's just like the stock market, right? They do the exact same thing in the stock market. Unless you're on the inside and you know what the companies are, right when they're about to start and you put your money in there, you're not going to make money with the stock market, right? You can be a long-term investor, put your money tied up, not being able to get it out unless you want to pay taxes on it. And you're not going to make the money you think you're going to make, right? Because they play upon your fantasies, people's ideologies of how things work. They won't tell you how it works, but they will play upon your weaknesses, right? I said that before. And this system that's rolling in, that people are going to be exposed to and what they're going to shift everybody over to, that's already begun. This is probably year 7 in the making of this system. And because society is totally broken down, but we talked about people's inability to simply see the truth anymore, right? Their inability to recognize God and truth. And they have set up man to be a deity for themselves. This is going to cause them to regret quite a bit, because they're going to lose more than their shirts this time, right? These people you call the elites or whatever you want to call them, they have plans. They haven't stopped their plans. In fact, things are going according to plan. I would say nothing has failed. That they're getting their way. But here's the funny part. People are doing it for them. What they would have to do themselves, people are doing it for them because they refuse to listen to truth itself. People accept fantasy over truth nowadays. Haven't you noticed? They don't want the solid foundation. They don't want the sound doctrine. And then the Bible, when the Bible says men will no longer endure sound doctrine, right? So sound doctrine is out of the window. Nobody wants to hear that. They want to hear the fascinating things, right? They want the promises and the glory of a promise more than the truth. The truth is too slow. We live in a fast society. We do. And because they want these things, and because they are desiring it by way of the heart, they're in support of these ceremonies that have been happening in the U.S., in direct support of them. The Wiccans, You guys know about the Wiccans, right? Anybody ever heard of the Wiccans? That's not somebody's last name. That's an organization of people. Do you know one of the trends in America right now is to be a Wiccan, but to also be a Christian? And for the Wiccans to insert themselves in Christianity, altering the doctrine. Do you know there are also inside the Catholic Church, there are certain people who have another name. They go by another name, but they have their loyalties not to Christ, not to Mary, not to anything like that. Their loyalty is to darkness, so to speak, right? And they have inserted themselves. The count is high among these people, and what they do is they go around and they alter principles slightly. They alter scripture slightly. Right? So they slowly steer a boat. So nobody notices they're changing course. It's been happening for a long time. Long time. You get a generation born at a time where they didn't know anything about the truth. All they have before them is what's been changed. We're in a generation like that. All we have before us is what's been changed. Everything we've been educated on, right? Many of those topics have been distant from the truth. And I'm one of those guys. I can't help but to remember what these people boast of. I can't help it. What they boast of and what they say that people are going to, they make their claims. Not one of them is true. But yet people trust them anyway, believe it or not. Right? They trust them. They support them. They keep them in power. And they're slowly steering the boat in a direction it shouldn't go in. Should not go in those sections. Well, when people start believing it, it's because they're absent the Spirit. God's children will never fall for that. Not ever. Do you know why? Because the Lord said he would not permit it. Only those who on the inside are truly darkness are going to be deceived in the first place. God's children will never be deceived. Not ever. They're going to get their spankings. They're going to get corrected, but they're not going to fall for that stuff. Right? They're not. Because there's a boundary, a brick wall that will tell you no. No matter what. Doesn't matter how bad the peer pressure is. It's not going to be permitted. That's what the Holy Spirit is for. That's why part of your spirit came from the living God. Thus, is part of the family already. Right? But there are a lot of people who are not like that. This is my opinion. This is nowhere. But I would say 1 out of every 10 Christians is a real Christian. I'd say more like 1 out of 50 Christians is a real believer. Right? The rest are along for the ride. It's something they do. It's in their tradition, whatever the case is. But 1 out of 50 would be a real believer. Right? Meaning there truly will be a remnant, only a remnant, when these things begin to happen. But there's good news, because during this disaster, these things that we've been having in America and in other places, a lot of good is coming out of people. But I have to tell you about something I noticed, something unexpected. There are too many witches providing humanitarian aid. They're being good. They're loving their neighbors as themselves. It's almost like they're practicing godly principles. I'm talking about witches who are very nice, right? They don't argue. They're providing people. They're being very kind to people. Witches. So we're not talking about Christians. We're talking about witches, right? They're providing for people. They are really inserting themselves in lots of people's lives. They are. And you know what they're going to do? Upon Satan's little unction he gives them, just like the Holy Spirit would give us a nudge, so will Satan give them a nudge. They're going to activate rip down terror. They're already, they're gaining their placement among people. Now, the only way you can't see these people is to be emotionally compromised. If you believe in the good that somebody is doing, you've already messed up. That sounds strange, doesn't it? Here's what I mean by that. If somebody doing a good deed all the time can make you say that's a good person, you're already had. You've been had. You've been had. You know, because last time I checked, most of the folks who were absolutely loyal to the living God, they murdered people, right? They chopped people's heads off. They did quite a few things. Because of their deeds in the earth of the old man, people shunned them. They couldn't even see who they belonged to. The greatest of the prophets were like that also. It's not that their lives were infallible. That's not the case. It's that they were bold enough when they got the call. Nothing would stop them from that call. God knew they would keep their course, right? Some of those folks were incredibly stubborn and challenging, and they had other things too. But in this day and age, right, if you're kind to a person and nice to a person, people believe you're good. That's getting people left and right, setting them up, right? It's probably why, in my opinion, America has been invaded already. Probably why. They're just people rising up to positions of corporate leaders and everything else who have no loyalty to the U.S. They have a loyalty to the dollar, not the U.S. In fact, they have greater interests outside of America. They don't care about you or I. They care about their business becoming more powerful than somebody else's business. And they're all over the place. And here's the scary thing to me. You ready? Here's the scary thing. There are so many who have no conviction of going against Christ. Take no thought of it. They take no thought of it. They do anything and everything under the sun. And they're very nice people. Very foul on the inside. Because when you bring up Christ, that's the point. They part company with you. They don't want to hear about Christ. They're nice all the way up until that point. You start talking about Christ, they're out of there. They've turned real hateful. They're gone. They're all over the place. There's too many of them. Like a takeover, some type has been happening. Well, all the Christians, the real Christians, have been bound up by their own issues, right? These guys have been spreading all over the place. And it's spread to the point where they're in positions you can't get them out of, right? Even some of the secret societies have been talking about that very thing. They don't like it either. Tell me that's a switch. Who would come on the scene that secret societies wouldn't like them either? And they're not Christians. We have something different happening now, which takes all the forecasts except for biblical prophecy, and it's going to stomp them to the ground. In the end, the only one that will be right is our Father. I'm going to be wrong. You're going to be wrong. Everybody's going to be wrong. But the Father's word is going to be right in the end. These elements are, they're going to shake some people up. So are some of the events, right? But again, they're setting people up to be shamed. They have to do away with people's confidence in people they cannot control. Stay mindful of that. Because some of these people they're going to shame, right? They don't kill people anymore for divulging information. They don't lock them up either. You only get locked up when you don't go along with the program. They don't care how bad you are. They care if you go against their system that they set up, right? Because they set up these systems because they're awaiting someone. They're getting someone ready, right? Someone is getting ready to walk through something, and then they will exercise what they must exercise. And when that happens, people will switch. How many of you have seen a person switch? It's almost like they become a different person and they never go back to normal. Anybody ever witnessed that? Because you're about to see that all over the world. That's very difficult to explain, but it's a season. It will happen. Imagine you have a sibling, your brother, his sister, whatever the case is, and then one day they switch. They just switch. They're not the person they used to be. That will most certainly happen. It's happening too much. Kind of like that girl that was standing in the highway, right? A car hit the girl. She got back up with this crazed look on her face, and then she hit somebody's windshield with her fists and broke it. You can't break a windshield with your fist when you're about 120 pounds. How does that work? This girl did. She was hit by a car, 2 broken legs confirmed, and she stood up, jumped on the front of the car, and broke the windshield. She switched. She wasn't herself. To this, I believe, right now, that happened a couple days ago, and right now, that girl is not hospitalized. Why? Because when they put her back in the back of the ambulance, she broke the restraints and ran off. That's why. You know, that happened before, back in, was that 2007 that happened with the two girls that were, I think they were twins? That happened in Europe. Also happened again in Italy. It also happened one more time in I believe it was that Salinas, California? I believe it was Salinas, California. And 2 times in Canada, right? But now it's happening too many times. Like the boy, the little child that was in the hospital and ran up backwards like a spider on the wall. Was it cussing? All sorts of things were coming out of his mouth. A little boy now, he ran up backwards up a wall. He messed up the doctor. The people that were there seeing it, they had to get counseling. They can't even go back to their jobs because they're terrified now. These things are happening all over the world, right? You know, it's one thing for an adult to be overcome by spirits. It's another for a child. Do you know what has to happen for a child to be overcome by a spirit? Anybody know? That child has to have parents who are somewhat twisted and have not ever covered that child. It takes generations to prepare a child for an invasion, for an infestation like that. And then to exercise its power through a child by running up backwards on a wall, a hospital wall. This happened a long time ago. I believe that was that in Indiana. It happened in Indiana, I believe, a long, long time ago. We have some very strange. No wonder the Catholic priests are saying we need exorcists. They're worried about attendance. Do you know that? They're worried about people who are coming into the church, and now some of the folks who sit at the top, they're starting to feel an influence they've not dealt with before. An influence is smarter than their smartest professors, better out talking them and talking people to walk away from the Catholic Church. I mean, we have some element in the earth that has awakened. And it's really doing damage, right? Just bad damage. There was a guy that was on fire. He was on fire. The report from the firemen and the individual first responders there said this guy was pacing back and forth in the flames. He had severe burns. His skin was gone. He was still pacing, muttering something. He didn't shed a tear. He showed no signs of pain or anything. And then when they wrapped him up in the hospital, this guy never screamed out, never asked for medication, never did nothing. He muttered the whole time. The whole time. This guy was not nice either. And then the day he was about to get, his skin was starting to heal, they were about to do grafts, he's gone. He got up in bandages and all and left, and they haven't seen him since. We got problems. There are problems here. And I believe that people's toying around. One thing that gets me, and guys have to forgive me for my passion here, because when you start seeing these factual, not the made up stuff, but the factual stories like this, you can't help but to get a little, I get a little passionate because people, they have no idea what they're doing in the smallest argument. Listen to me. God does not want us to have debate in us. Not at all. Debate yields darkness. It hurts. And people suppress that hurt. That turns into more darkness and resentment, which grows and infests a person and spreads. It infiltrates everything they do, and they start spreading this darkness all over the place. And then they themselves become a doorway. A portal. Human beings, God gave man authority over the earth, didn't he? Did not God give man authority and dominion over the earth? He did, didn't he? So then the only way a demon can invade something is if man has given him authorization. And according to the Word of God, our desires reflect a part of our true belief. And it's that belief that can open these doorways. And it all stems from people playing with their salvation, not taking it seriously, thinking it slight, thinking it easy. And while Christians are just taking it slight, they're glad they can relax in quietness, Satan's out there just taking everybody over he can. Need to remind you, you put on this earth to shine a bright light, of which darkness can never overcome. But if you don't shine that light, darkness is already there. Did you notice if you go in a dark room, it's dark. Until you turn the light on, it's dark. And if you turn that light off, it's dark. And you were put down in the darkness to shine a light. But if you stop shining that light in truth, the darkness is already there. Already. And with the things we're about to experience and see, depression will most certainly increase. The fear levels people haven't dealt with that. They've not been in a crisis in America. I know we had Katrina. I know we had the capital problem, but that's not a crisis. They've not been through massive devastations, nor had they didn't have to live in those devastations. This generation is so separate from any thoughts of suffering from war or anything else that we're starting a war again. They fight too much. And when people fight, it lets me know they have no idea what the end result is. Of the smallest contention, death can come. Darkness works. God's light is order. Remember that saying back in 2000, what was it, 7? I was hated for that, by the way. I don't think any of you guys did that. But this world is changing fast. And too many people who say they're ready for it, they're not ready for it. I used to go through that quite often. A person would say, oh, I'm ready for anything. Hardened soldiers. Then they would see something they never thought they would see. And they would cry like whimpering babies. Now those hidden things that exist in the world, they're not going to be hidden for long. But they only come out, the hidden realm, the veil, if you will, it rips when humanity is ripped. It is almost like a direct reflection of humanity itself, and when we're torn, so will it tear. Satan will maximize his blows. He waits until a person falls and then he pounces. He will never face anybody when they're standing on their feet. He'll knock you down first. Are you guys mindful of that? You know what? I had no plans to come on, but because I'm somewhat disturbed right now, I guess the Lord has me in places where I see things, too many things. I don't like when I see people. I really don't. People are becoming, people are losing it. Too many people are losing. I'm not complicit with anyone. I'm being lost to darkness. I'm just not. Right? If it were my way, they wouldn't fall to that. Because it's, I know most people, they love to accuse somebody. I'm not like that. I really want to see people make it. But a lot of people are giving in. And I hope that you guys will never give in. No matter what, I pray that you won't give in. No matter how tough it gets, I pray that you won't give in. And you know what? The Lord talked about that. With these, he talked about it in the Old Testament. He talked about people. All they spoke about was peace. God said this. They talked about peace to his people. You know what the Lord said? The Lord said he has never spoken anything about peace. That they weakened his people. They weakened them. They weakened them to the point where they could not stand when the trouble came, because they spoke peace, peace, peace. When God said, no, you're not going to have peace. You're going to have trouble on top of trouble. In fact, our lives reflect that same thing, don't they? Don't our lives reflect that? They reflect trouble after trouble after trouble. What does the Lord truly teach us? How to overcome all troubles. He does. He teaches us how to overcome. The troubles don't leave. We just overcome them through Christ. Haven't you noticed? When people are looking for peace all the time, they stop working, and they sit and they wait, and they get weaker and weaker. And we're supposed to be built up to the point where we can withstand the wiles of the enemy. Within us is the peace that surpasses all understanding. But outside of us is pure chaos, and it's getting worse. We're the ones sent here to make a difference. The question is, are we doing everything we can do? Following all the instructions of Christ to make a difference. See, we're already stubborn. I'm stubborn, and probably everybody listening to me is stubborn. All we have to do is be stubborn for Christ and refuse to join in with this darkness that's in the world. I mean, absolutely refuse it. You know what? If a person says, well, I'm overweight and I have lack of control. No, you don't. Because every time you get upset, you start eating. That's the stubbornness. So how about this? How about every time you get upset, you refuse to let your body win, your thoughts win. You place all things under subjection and don't allow it to surface anymore, but have it purged. How about we redirect our stubbornness in the right direction? In other words, be stubborn to keep righteousness, right? Not be stubborn to keep some negative, dark attitude, but be stubborn to keep righteousness. How about that one? And for a person who they get upset and they start eating, then get upset and refuse to eat. Go on an instant fast. How about that one? That'll work. I do that all the time. I do. That's why I'm losing weight now. I do it all the time, guys. I do. I'll get to the point when this body wants too much, I'll cut off everything it gets. I'll do it in a heartbeat. I'll shut my body's mouth. You know how your body you'll crave things, and if you don't get it, you get an attitude, you get irritated, right? I get it to the highest point I can get and cut it off. I refuse, because the Lord put me in this body, and I have dominion over the body. The body does not have dominion over me. So the more it asks for, the more I deny it. It eats when I feed it. It rests when I call for it. Otherwise, I'll push it over the edge and to the max. But as a result of that, though, it's made me pretty stern to any outside influence. That's a good stubbornness, because no one's going to challenge the righteousness of Christ, I believe in. No situation. If no good deed was ever done from this day, and no light shined anywhere, I would still believe as strong as I do now. I will not waver in faith. That's what it's all about. The Lord is building us up that we do not waver in our faith. Because when we do things on our own, we have wavered in our faith. If we believe in the living God and Christ, we'll wait for an eternity until he instructs.